Alright, so change of plan, obviously. Let's just go right into talking about the Cloverfield Paradox, which apparently, obviously, we're just getting these things thrown at us suddenly now. I guess that's going to be what they do. And there was obviously God Particle, which had been... The idea had been floating around for a while, and we kept hearing about it in the cast and all that. But then, just like, what was it, last week, we got news of this fourth one that was made in secrecy that's like some supernatural World War II thing. And so I was like, when I basically got word just a mere few hours ago, yo, they're putting the fucking Cloverfield sequel on Netflix right after the Super Bowl, it was kind of like, is it the World War II one or God Particle? I was, I was so thrown off. That's the first thing I got caught up in. And apparently this is God Particle. So, because I remember hearing that David Oyelowo was going to be in it, I didn't realize the likes of Daniel Brühl and Gugu Mbatha-Raw and Chris O'Dowd and John Ortiz were in it as well. So, this is all just happening very suddenly and very quickly. So, going into it, it is a case where we're getting different things. The thing that seems to be happening that's... I don't know if it's completely confirmed or not, but this whole idea of these were all going to be, with the exception of the original, obviously, these were going to be original movies, like 10 Cloverfield Lane being The Cellar or something. That in order to get them made, they just said, well, we'll make that movie, but we're going to slap the Cloverfield thing on it and maneuver around to get them into the universe, throw in details here and there. I'm not really sure. It does seem like... It always seems like the most random place they put the word Cloverfield. Like in this particular case, it was the name of the fucking street in 10 Cloverfield Lane. Now it's the name of the space station. It's really hard to tell. And they're still obviously being a little bit mysterious about it. But it is worth noting. It's interesting to watch them go in these different directions. With the whole Cloverfield being like the giant found footage monster movie thing. Then 10 Cloverfield Lane being this kind of small chamber piece type thing with an explosive ending. And then this one is... They give us some very interesting vibes at the start that are really kind of sending mixed messages. Because at first it's like, we start off and she's on Earth just talking to her boyfriend, getting there, being vague about their backstories and shit. This is the part where we will eventually care about them if they just throw this stuff out at us early. And then suddenly we fade out and we fade back in and we're in space. It's this massive shot. It looks made for a theater screen, despite the small Netflix screen on my computer. But, yeah. And then we go from there and it's like immediately it's kind of like, well, okay, we're going right back to massive. Because we were massive on Earth in the first one, then they were small on Earth in the second, but now we're in space and we're getting bigger. But the thing that this movie has that the other two don't, that is probably a lot more tone-setting than you would give credit for, is we've got an opening credits sequence. When, obviously, the first Cloverfield has a lot of build-up until everything goes down, like 20 to 25 minutes of just that ridiculous party, until shit finally went down. And then, but then 10 Cloverfield Lane just kind of goes immediately, just right in there, maybe 30 seconds to establish Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and then they just throw us right the fuck into it. In this one, it seems like it's trying to take that kind of breathing room by giving... Like, it starts off immediately because we go straight from Earth to space, but then they're also trying to give us that breathing room by giving us this intro. And instead of the title being not shown at all and then just going right into the stuff, or, like, Mary Elizabeth Winstead's car crash taking it into us, it's just... The title's just gently given to us. It's like... It's kind of like a continuation of Gravity or something is what we're about to get into. And so it's definitely kind of trying to set up like it's going to be some kind of different change of pace, for sure. So we have that. And as it goes on and we see the whole introduction, it's kind of like, okay, so they're going to try for something like Gravity or Interstellar or The Martian or something like that. God forbid we get something like Life. But yeah, this is one of the... Where after a while, you do start to piece together what could be happening or where we could be headed. And it's kind of like, are we just in for another Alien? People trapped on a space station, they're going to get off by a creature one by one. Is that pretty much what we're in for? Well, and that's not even the only alien vibe. There's also the, when the dude's eye starts to get fucked up and he's, like, looking at himself in the mirror, it's kind of like, I'm getting so many vibes of Logan Marshall Green and Prometheus. So it's like, okay, so far, it's the biggest surprise of the movie is that we're watching it. So, but you kind of let it go and you kind of let it piece together. Because they do let us know, the big question is, like, the big fear, really, is, are we going to get really caught up in the whole maintaining the mystery thing, to where it's like, now that we're 3 movies in, is it going to start getting annoyingly vague? Like, they're going to keep teasing us about what exactly is going on here. I think you can probably answer that question yourself, whether you watched it or not. But, the thing about that, though, is that, there isn't as much of a, like, build up on the mystery as there could have been, because I was starting to think that it was going to basically all take place on the space station, which probably would have gotten it accused of being, like, 10 Cloverfield Lane, where we just use the one setting. But no, surprisingly, we keep cutting back to Earth, and we're following Gugu's boyfriend around as he sees what all, well, does or does not see what all is going on Earth, that may or may not be even worse and more tragic than what's going on in space. And yeah, so that does kind of give us the whole where if we don't feel like we're being jerked around as much as we probably could be. I don't know if that's a legitimate compliment or not. I guess it depends on the person. But, and they make it very clear very early on, that we're going to be dealing with, like, dimensions. It's just a matter of what they do with that. Got a little Donald Logue cameo to tell us all this. And it kind of like almost like an I Am Legend sort of opening. And, yeah, there's a lot of familiar ground here. In a series that's been so full of surprises, I imagine this will probably bother a lot of people. Like, and it's one of those cases where you have enough time to kind of say, obviously, usually I don't care, but people get really, really bent out of shape, especially in sci-fi movies with crews like this, like the most recent Alien movies. When the crew don't come off as the smartest bunch. I'm usually able to just embrace their fucking movie characters. They're gonna do what they're gonna do. They're in, a sci-fi, thriller, horror type thing. They're going to do what those characters would do in those movies. And not act like the brilliant scientists they really would have to be in this scenario. But yeah, there are scenarios like that. Like, when they first find Elizabeth Debicki in the wall, and she's, like, got a bunch of shit in her, and they have to get her out to safety. And it's like, she calls Gugu by her name, and that alone, despite all the shit that's going on here, all this frantic shit, all the holy shit, some person just materialized in the wall, and they've got shit inside them, we have to get out, we have to save this person. But her just calling Gugu by her name is enough to make everybody stop what they're doing and look on in awe. Like, how did she know your name, man? And it's like, I think you can wonder about that later. Like, I would think in that scenario it wouldn't even kick in, they called me by my name, what the fuck is that? That would only occur to you later. It's like, oh, that was weird, I should ask about that. But no, they all, like, stop dead when this happens, when all this other important shit is going on. There's stuff like that. So that's, I can only imagine that that's going to frustrate many people as well. And then there's sometimes where it's almost like they seem, and maybe I'm giving them credit, more credit than maybe they need, but, sometimes it feels like they're kind of playing with that, like playing with what would be a genuine reaction in this scenario. Like, take for instance, we've got our comedy relief supplied by Chris O'Dowd. I was hoping when I saw him in the cast list he'd be a little more serious, but he's the comedy relief, which is fine because Chris O'Dowd is hilarious, as always. But the thing here is, I don't know if it fully works, especially in the context. Like, just, there's a particular moment where suddenly Chris O'Dowd's character he's pretty much kind of serious and just part of the crew for most of the time, but then one event happens, and you would think it would be something that would, like, fuck him up, or make him even more serious. But no, this event really takes him into pretty much every line he says is comedy relief. And I don't know, because at first, when the incident, something bizarre happens to him, and I kind of thought it was a kind of a genuine reaction to what it is. The way he just kind of said, he screams for help, and then he's just like, whoa. And it's like, well, this is weird, to where, like, he's not really sure how to react to this because it's such a bizarre occurrence. And then it seems like they play with this, because once that goes to the extreme, there's like a comedy bit where that continues on, where he's so nonchalant about what has happened to him, which is pretty major. But they play that up kind of like it's this whole kind of disorienting, how else would one react to this thing? I don't know. But as far as being the comedy relief, I will say that Chris O'Dowd, because he's so good at just what he does just in comedy in general, with like his timing and the way he delivers lines, this probably absolutely would not work under a different actor, but because it's Chris O'Dowd, it's almost like that in itself kind of gives it a bit of dignity. So, so there's that. Maybe I'm just really biased towards Chris O'Dowd. That's totally possible. So, yeah, and it's one of those cases, too, to where it's like, after we get going, it's, like I brought up, oh no, I didn't bring it up yet. Obviously, once we're introduced to Elizabeth Debicki's character, there are other movies that are going to start coming to mind. Not by any means on the level of, like, Gravity or Alien or Interstellar or The Martian. Now we're in territory like Supernova and Pandorum. And honestly, without saying too much, if you've seen Supernova or Pandorum, congratulations, you may not even have to watch this movie. Because we just go right in those directions. And of course, it's like, we're going to get some things that are set up in like the first half hour, but it's like, that are so clearly fake outs. The first clue being that these things are revealed so early. So it's like you can just point a fake out from a mile away and exactly where that's eventually going to lead us and what the story is trying to hide from us. So yes, I do think the movie is going to have an advantage for sure when people first lay eyes on it, because it's going to feel like a novelty. Like it's amazing that we're actually just watching this, something we probably would never have guessed 24 hours ago that we'd be doing. So people might like it more kind of at first sight, but it's got a lot of problems. But then again, like I said, it's got a really likable cast. The effects are really well done. The production design is really great. And there's enough in there. There's also, it takes kind of a dilemma turn, a moral dilemma turn, or whatever you want to call it. But where it is an emotional peak for the movie and a certain character and a situation that arises. And it's commendable that they put stuff like that in here as well, and don't just go straight for the obvious thriller thing that they're doing. They're clearly trying to do a little more and say a little more, and also not necessarily just say, oh, we're gonna stop everything now because you gotta wait for another movie. There's enough, it doesn't necessarily feel like some kind of, filler movie, like to continue to tease us. It's clear it probably would have been its own movie at one point. Once again, maybe a movie we've seen a few times already. So yeah, they do try to throw some of those twists and turns in there, but the surprises end very fast, especially if you've seen at least a couple of movies that are anything like this. So that's a little disappointing. Definitely not the surprise that was 10 Cloverfield Lane. Which is still, that one definitely was not a novelty. I've seen 10 Cloverfield Lane at least 2 or 3 more times since the first time, and that's just a fucking great movie, just in itself. And this movie is not going to stand alone like that. Like, 10 Cloverfield Lane stands alone. The first movie stands alone. This, as a standalone, like I said, it doesn't even necessarily feel like some franchise movie, even though we may or may not, see things at the very last minute. They're like, oh, well, can't wait to see them continue to tease us with that. But especially if we're going back in time for the 4th one to World War II or whatever it is. So, yeah, so it's, honestly, I think I like it more than it probably sounds like I do. I'm kind of in the middle on it, but it's still well done enough to be totally watchable and, just yeah, it's not gonna hurt or anything, unless, like I've said, you've seen enough of these movies and you're kind of tired of the same old points. Yeah, and like I said, if you're one of those people that gets really bent out of shape when people in sci-fi thrillers are not the smartest people, you're gonna be pissed. So you're gonna be really pissed. So, but yeah, honestly, it's fine. It doesn't live up to its placement in this franchise that they're building to after the first two, but by itself, it's like fine. But yeah, we'll just wait and see what else is going on. So, yeah, I would have thought I had a lot more to say about this, but that's pretty much it. So this is going to probably look a little weird because I shot the reviews for Hostiles and A Futile and Stupid Gesture yesterday, and the plan was to watch 2 VOD movies and put them on the end of those, but I think I'm going to put this in front of that instead. So, we're about to abruptly cut to me talking about Hostiles, and there's going to be no outro. I'm going to talk about A Futile and Stupid Gesture, and then that's just going to stop. So hopefully my shitty editor puts these together well. I still haven't gotten one that's, like, worth a shit. So, because the good ones are, like, fucking subscription-based, and for now I have to say fuck that, from a financial standpoint. But, so, yeah. So let's go, right on to the next. We can start with Hostiles, the movie that, as I correctly predicted, we did get this week, since the only other thing we got was Winchester, which I'm sure I'll see eventually, but I didn't want to rush towards, especially since we got Hostiles instead. And once again, I was really, really hyped about this because Scott Cooper made it, and he gave us Crazy Heart, Out of the Furnace, and Black Mass, which show that he's just getting better and better, and I love all of those. And so now we have this, and he's reteaming with Christian Bale, which is extremely exciting because Bale is incredible in Out of the Furnace. Probably even more so than his Oscar nomination that year with American Hustle. I like to think that Out of the Furnace kind of pushed that into happening. But, so this begins, and it's clear that, well, when it starts off, we do kind of start to maybe fear a little bit in regards to how exactly certain people are going to be portrayed. For instance, like, we were talking about what Taylor Sheridan has been doing for Native American people and their actors, and giving them these roles and letting them tell these stories. And so this movie begins, and you kind of start to question exactly how they're going to be portrayed at the start. But Scott Cooper's strength, by far, is the way he uses his characters and the way he tells their stories. So I wasn't really all that worried, but it is definitely an explosive and provoking opening, for sure. But it immediately gives us 2 scenes. Because we start off with one scene, and it's like, oh, so that's where they're coming from, and we see this brutality and the way it's portrayed and who is portraying it. And then there's the next scene, and we are introduced to Christian Bale's character, and it's like, okay, so this is going to be one of those movies that shows us that both sides are equally brutal and ruthless. Because we have the opening where the Indians slaughter Rosamund Pike's family, and then we have this parallel scene where Bale is torturing and potentially killing a Native American family as well. So, and we get to go on Bale for a little bit, and we learn exactly where this hatred comes from, like, immediately. Like, there's hardly a mystery here from the start. Obviously, there's going to be an arc, so we have to start with the hatred, and the movie doesn't waste time getting there, which I really like, especially because this is another great, I know it's not surprising at all, but this is another great Bale performance. And he's explained to Stephen Lang, because he's been given he's about to retire, and he's gonna lose his pension if he doesn't escort Wes Studi and his family to a burial site where he's going to eventually die of cancer and be buried and all that. So that's eventually we'll get to that point, but the thing here is that he absolutely refuses to do this because there is such a legitimate hatred like an absolute hatred for these people. Even it doesn't matter if the guy's already dying of cancer. He is absolutely 100%. I'm not gonna do something for them because they're savages. They're bastards and bitches, as he puts it. And it's even when, like, Bill Camp speaks up in this scene, he just has that delivery. He doesn't even look at him. He just says, "Shut the fuck up, you pasty face." And it's like, and it's really, really believable from the absolute start where he's coming from. But because of this pension threat, he decides that he will take them to the burial site. So, and then we kind of get this bit, obviously it's kind of a journey movie from then on, and obviously at some point, maybe characters will change, maybe they won't. But there will be a very kind of hostile environment, where both of these sides kind of get to come out of everybody, not just one set is one set and one is the other. We're going to explore all of these different sides throughout this, and we've got 2 hours and 15 minutes to do it, so I think we'll be fine. A lot of recognizable faces like Jesse Plemons, Timothée Chalamet, Ben Foster, Roy Cochran, who was so good in Black Mass with Cooper. And the problem here, though, if there's one problem the movie has that really stands out, I mean, it does have just a little bit of a length problem, not a lot, but it does feel like maybe 5 minutes or so could have been cut off, but the main problem the movie has is Rosamund Pike's performance. I'm still not quite sure how I feel about her. I wasn't one of the people that went fucking crazy for her in Gone Girl. I went crazy for Gone Girl, but not necessarily her performance in total. But here, she leaves a lot to be desired. It's kind of like, well, the way her character is handled isn't particularly seamless either. Because when it starts off, obviously the opening scene being the slaughter of her family, when Bale and his crew show up, it's like she's still there and she's got the bodies of her children. She's basically doing the Michelle Williams and Shutter Island thing. And it's like, oh, so that's where this character's going. But, not really. It's like they build it up like it's going to be that, and then it's just like, oh, well, maybe not, I guess. It's like, is she insane or is she not? The movie can't really seem to decide that. She's mourning a lot. And that, to their credit, I do like, even if it doesn't exactly work well entirely on the screen, I do like that he did decide to take the time to have this character grieve in that way, because it's like, you see so many movies where, like, people lose people that are close to them and they just die, and it's like, it kind of catches you off guard that they just accept it so quickly, because the movie has to move on. But Rosamund Pike's character, it just happens really quickly at the start, so she's obviously shaken by it at the start, but we don't really get to see her react much to it. But then they pretty much use the rest of the movie, she's like grieving them. So I think this would have been a lot more effective if the performance itself was a little more effective. It reminded me a lot of, this will sound weird, but hear me out, it reminded me a lot of how I felt about Rene Russo in Ransom, to where it's one of those cases to where it's like, you're watching some of the bigger scenes, and you're like, well, I guess it makes sense for her to act like that, because she's had such a loss, such a magnificent loss. But then the other part of your head is going, wow, this is overdramatic. This is, like, embarrassingly melodramatic. And that's the thing, though, is I think it could have worked if you had an actress that could really sell it. And Pike wasn't really selling it, for me, anyway. And it's almost like, it's like this is a woman that has just watched her family brutally slaughtered, 3 children and a husband, and it's brutal as hell. And it's like, I should not be watching her grieve and say this is laughably dramatic. It's like, of course it's dramatic, but I mean, just the way it plays off just doesn't really work. And it's really her performance, honestly. And going on performances as well in this nice cast, I was really excited to see Wes Studi made the poster, and he's like a really crucial character. He's the character. He's the dying character they have to take to his death spot. And it's like, this is the guy where, like, the last time he had a role this crucial was probably Last of the Mohicans. But then there was, like, he was the Sphinx in Mystery Men. He was the detective with Ted Levine in Heat. He's been in so much stuff, and it's like, it's really cool to see him get a part like this, where he's like, his name and his face are on the poster and everything. But despite being such a crucial character, he's quite underused. He and his family are actually pretty underused, unfortunately. You can tell Taylor Sheridan didn't write this. I would love to have seen Taylor Sheridan write this story, actually. Even keeping Cooper's direction, that actually would have really meshed well. But no, they still feel underused. He and Adam Beach plays his son, who we saw so wonderfully used in Suicide Squad. Who was great stuff like Flags of Our Fathers. Had a major part in Wind Talkers. He's really good with war movies. But the thing here is that some of this is fine because it's a movie that really is at its peak when there's no dialogue. This is a movie that really takes its silences seriously. And that's the good thing about Bale, is Bale can excel at both of these. Because there's one particular scene that doesn't have dialogue when he's coming to terms with the fact that he has this mission and has no choice to do it. And he just goes out into a field and screams, but it's a really beautiful scene because he sells it so well and it's beautifully shot. And I want to say it's Max Richter that did the score, which is a major asset as well. But then also he handles the dialogue very well as well. There is the scene once again where we're really showing off his hatred, when they've left town and they have the whole trail of them and they're kind of bringing them along, and it's like this big triumphant thing for them, and it's like his final, West Duty's final walk to his place. And then it's like Bale, once they're out of sight of the authorities, Bale just stops and says word for word, okay, this fucking parade's over, and makes him get off the horse. And it's like, so, dialogue, no dialogue, Bale really makes the scenes work, but the movie really sells these moments that are more played on what we're seeing as opposed to what we're hearing. And there's a lot of intensity, too. That's not to take away from the fact that there are some action scenes in this movie. The older couple in front of me left after, like, the first gun battle because they thought it was too violent. I believe the exact guy's words were, I can't take 2 hours of this. So it's like, I get you. It gets pretty brutal. I think it's brutal, few and far between, but I mean, when it gets there, it's pretty brutal, so I get it. Yes, and then we go on, and about halfway through the movie, there's a bit of a shift when Ben Foster comes into it. Lo and behold, when Ben Foster and Christian Bale reunite, the movie actually becomes 3:10 to Yuma, and not just because they're in it. Where Foster is this prisoner they have to escort. And I think, especially when you cast Foster as the prisoner, I think they could have done a lot more with this. This is like how I say the movie really excels with its lack of dialogue scenes and we're just watching shit. They could have really played up the dialogue scenes once they introduced Foster's character and really had him be... I know, it's kind of hard to say that without basically making him Ben Wade. With Bale still being Dan Evans. But I think it could have worked, honestly. Like, obviously, it already gives us vibes of 3:10 to Yuma. And yeah, you could have gone in that direction, but I still think it could have worked in the confines of this movie, because there's a whole different story going on. Kind of adding this into the West Duty plot about taking him to his gravesite. There's definitely something to be had here, especially since he served in the same side of the war as them, so he's kind of always taunting them with stuff like that. I feel like they could have done a lot more with that, but overall it's still fine. Throw in also Rory Cochran's character that sets himself up like he's going to be a big deal at the beginning when he has a dialogue scene with Bale, and it's a really good character to have too. But it also kind of feels like he's a bit more put on the side than maybe he should be as well. There's so many characters here that could just be really bringing this to life. Like, if they gave... Like, I know, even doing the silences, you could have really amped up this dialogue, too, and given, like, West Duty more, scenes with more gravity, made Ben Foster, more taunting, made Rory Cochran more of a focus in his whole kind of weary way about him and the way he kind of views what all's going on now and how he's just basically at the end of his rope with all of this while everybody else... We've got, like, Chalamet here as, like, the really young one, who's only here for, like, 30 seconds, but it's notable that he's there. And you, like I said, we really could have done a lot more with the character, which sucks because that's clearly Cooper's strong suit, his characters, but still, that's not to take away from the fact that the movie itself does work. It's just there's some things where you really wish they kind of elaborated more, and it could have been something truly great. But overall, it's good. It's good for sure. But it just feels like there could have been a lot more. So I say they could have cut 5 minutes. That's as it is. If they had given these characters more juice and more meat, you could have gotten away with this being pretty long, and it would have been okay. But as it is, it feels like they're just not quite going enough in a lot of ways. But it's still very effective, still very effectively brutal, still very, emotionally moving for sure. Once again, imagine that emotion, though, if we got more character. I would really love that. We even got Ryan Bingham, the guy that did some of the music for Crazy Heart, that wrote the songs, is in it, and he even gets to sing. So I thought that was kind of a cool way to bring us back to Crazy Heart. If there's one other problem I kind of have, I can't really tell if it's me or not. The thing I noticed about it was, despite how good it looked, to me anyway, it was really dark. There was definitely darkness to it, but the reason I'm not sure if that's just me is because in my theater, I think the projector bulb was on its last legs, because there were moments where it would noticeably go dim and flicker a little bit. So I don't know if that was what it was all the time, or if there are portions of this movie that are I understand you're out in the middle of nowhere, but being on a movie set, you could turn the damn lights on just a little bit. It's there's even stuff like some of the scenes with Foster where it's they're in the sun, but it's they're covered in shadows all of the time. So that was a bit off-putting sometimes. Like I said, I don't know if it was just the fact that I think the projector was near death or what, but yeah, so overall, it breaks Cooper's trend of getting better as he goes, but it's still definitely, he still has no misses. He's still very far away from a miss at this point. These are 4 very strong movies. I honestly can't remember if there's one before Crazy Heart or not. I feel like I'm totally forgetting something, and I might be embarrassed when I look it up, but it's my understanding these are the 4. So once again, he continues with this greatness, almost. We don't quite get to greatness, but it feels like it was right there. It was right within our grasp. But that doesn't, take too much away from the product that is here. That's not to undermine it at all. So, it is still very good regardless. Our second movie is going to go way off now. The Netflix movie, A Futile and Stupid Gesture, which is about a guy that I knew by name. I knew his name, but that's all I really knew. I knew him from movie credits, basically. Doug Kenny, I believe, who basically started the National Lampoon magazine, and ultimately, when we got into the movies like Animal House and Caddyshack, who here is portrayed by Will Forte. And the movie immediately had me by the poster, when it's had the famous National Lampoon cover of "Buy this magazine or we'll shoot this dog," but the poster is "See this movie or we'll shoot Will Forte." It doesn't say Doug Kenny; it says Will Forte. So that the whole idea kind of had me enjoying it. I was like, this should be quite interesting, especially seeing the fact that we were going to get a lot of some of the more famous faces and see exactly how they fit into the story. Now, once again, of course, it's always going to be we're not sure how accurate this is, but the movie plays with that immediately, having Martin Mull play what could have been version of him, narrating the movie to us. And there are actually moments when he says, oh, these actors obviously don't look like the actors, Will Forte is obviously not 27. Hey, here's all the other stuff that we're not putting in this, and here's all the other contributors to the magazine that didn't quite make the cut because they were cut for time. And it's this is exactly what I was talking about with Darkest Hour, when people bitch and complain about what has to be done to a story to make it into a movie. And this movie calls out all that stuff, so that was a huge relief. I love that they threw that in, especially with a personality as hilarious as Martin Mull telling us all this. One of the more kind of underrated comedic geniuses ever. And the thing here is, that's our start though. So all this stuff is great, but the trouble is when it's actually telling the story, it's kind of hard to gauge exactly what we're looking at, because the main story here is Will Forte and his friend, who is played by Donald Gleason, his friend from college, who basically they created the magazine together from the ground up, and then all this other stuff started to go down. All the way into, they bring Maddie Simmons into it and all that other stuff. The guy whose name you see on all the National Lampoon movies, specifically the vacation movies. And the problem here is that it's clear that they want to tell this story of funny people while also being funny. But the thing about it that's really interesting and conflicting is that it's not really that funny. Even when it's trying to be a comedy, it's not particularly funny, but the story is, if this is the kind of story that grabs you and you want to know where all this stuff came from and how it came to be, it's still kind of interesting. It's almost like watching a documentary played by actors, knowing that obviously surely a lot of it has been changed. But the thing here though is that it's the fact that you can tell they're attempting to be funny is what kind of throws you off, and makes it kind of seem like they're hitting one side well enough, but the other side, I don't know. It's kind of like, it's definitely comparable to Private Parts, but the thing about it is, while Private Parts told the very interesting story of how Howard Stern came to be, that movie is hilarious throughout. That movie is a flat-out comedy, which also happens to be a biography. And that is exactly what they appear to be going for. But the problem is that it's really just not that funny. And there's even a line I believe Donald Gleason has where he says, he's talking about the stuff that's in the magazine in the early stages, and he says, well, I mean, it looks funny, but it's not funny. And it's like, wow, that's exactly, like, this movie is very self-aware. The movie is self-aware the whole time, but it's like, I think they got more self-aware than they bargained for with that line. It's like, I don't think that's what they were going for when they put that in there, but, yes. So, and it is obviously one of the things that's gonna really attract you, at least attract me, that's not there very much, is the whole how the more famous faces interacted with these behind-the-scenes people. Where we've got the little novelty of Joel McHale playing Chevy Chase when we know he knows him so well because of Community. And it's like Martin Mull says, it's like they don't look like the actors or anything, but you get the vibe. Like, I like the idea of Seth Green playing Christopher Guest, but he gets like 2 lines. And McHale, it's cases where it's like, he's definitely got, like, he doesn't sound like Chevy Chase, he certainly doesn't look like Chevy Chase, but it's the speech patterns and, like, kind of the way he dresses, too, and just the way he kind of seats himself. You definitely do get that vibe, and he's doing the pratfalls and all that Chase was known for. Not like the falling back in the chair thing, but like he'll just, whenever he, apparently, Doug Kennedy says, when every single time he saw Chevy Chase, that's the first thing he would do is just drop to the floor. So it gives you little insights like that, but then there's people, they introduce like Harold Ramis, who obviously worked on the magazine, but then ultimately went on to direct Caddyshack. I thought that guy played him really well. The guy playing Bill Murray, that was kind of scary, because he looks nothing like Bill Murray, but good God, he's got the voice down. Like, it's creepy. And so it's fun to see, like, little novelty things like that. But they're only in there for so long. And every now and then, something kind of unexpected to give credit to is, every now and then, this movie of all movies has some camera tricks that kind of stand out. Where it's like, oh, that's kind of cool the way that kind of flows into this. There's the obvious one, like when he moves to LA, and we kind of see that transition in one shot where he pulls off a suit and he's got like a Hawaiian shirt underneath and goes right into a set that looks like LA. But then there's also just these little camera movements, like when we're in the offices towards the beginning, and it like, the camera starts in one place, and then it like goes out of a room, and then we're introduced to like somebody else. We see Martin Mull, and then we pan over to like an art director who's walking by, and the art director walks by the door, and then we find the camera back on Donald Gleason, which is pretty much where we started. And it's like, well, that was kind of a cool move. And then there is, when we first meet Lorne Michaels in a bar, like, the first half of the scene is in the reflection of a mirror. And it's like, and it's kind of thinking, like, that could have been done in one take in that mirror, but it's like, hold on, I'm watching a movie about the creation of National Lampoon, and how we got into Animal House and Caddyshack, and it's like, and it's on Netflix, and it stars comedians, and it's like, that's weird, I'm sitting here analyzing the fucking camera movement. But, yeah, some of those things are thrown in there for good measure. And, yeah, there are, the performances are fine. I think the problem here is the characters we don't really latch on to, but that's definitely more in the writing, because Will Forte is like really talented. I don't know if I've said that enough, but there's so much that Will Forte can do. It's not always good. It's not. But the fact that he can do so many things, and that there are certainly absolutely things he does really well, I think say a lot about his talent. And here he's definitely able to, he's got it in him to be the center point of a movie, particularly like this. As he showed us with something like Nebraska. Like, I would have never thought him being like one of the basically leads in Nebraska would actually work. But it actually did in that movie. He made it work. And here he's definitely playing this character that's supposed to be a certain type, but it's kind of like, I honestly don't know if we're supposed to feel for him or not. And you can see where the confusion lies, and I don't know if it's so much the performance, so much of it is the writing. Because he really does start to have a downfall that would be very sympathetic in another movie, but it's like, this character, I just don't know that I feel it entirely, and it gets to some... I think another problem that makes it hard to feel for him is that if you're not really familiar with the story, when we get to the point to where it gets dark, and like Chevy Chase introduces him to cocaine, and then it's all downhill from there, it kind of comes from out of nowhere when this movie suddenly goes real dark, bleak biopic on us. And so, and some of it is kind of like, I'm really wondering what it's going to be like. I mean, obviously we're not, like, in the same territory as, like, Wired or anything, but it does make me wonder how the people that knew him are going to feel about this. Chevy Chase in particular, not just because he's a frequent co-worker, is playing him in this story, but the way he's portrayed as well, and the way that it actually takes a stance. It seems to take, like, a legitimate stance on what happened to him, because there's still a bit of mystery around it. That's interesting, and I'm very curious how the real people feel about that. But yeah, but for the most part, because, like I said, it's not even particularly... You don't really feel like you're getting a particular vibe of them that you're supposed to be when you're not really laughing. Because, like, there's one particular moment when, that's kind of funny, when they decide they're going to wreck Maddie Simmons' office, and when, you know, Forte's throwing stuff around and trashing everything, Donald Gleason's big thing is he just knocks a plaque off the wall, and, like, that's the exciting thing for him. And it's like, I feel like if we had moments like that where, when it actually felt like what it was supposed to be in the first place, we would get somewhere, but we don't really feel anything for really any of these people. Like, when he has a girlfriend and then he doesn't, it's kind of like, and when he keeps breaking up with people and they keep coming into his life, it's kind of like, we just kind of watch the revolving door with no emotion, and it's like, are we supposed to feel for the guy, or are we supposed to feel for them? But the people we're maybe supposed to feel for are barely in the story at all, but maybe that's the point. I don't know. It's all kind of all over the place. And then, like I said, it gets to a point where it gets dark, to where it's like, it turns into the Wolf of Wall Street. Like, he's on the cocaine, and it's like he's talking to his girlfriend, and then suddenly he's, like, shoving her and shit. But the movie's so nonchalant about showing that to us that it's really hard to, like... It's like they didn't really leave the frame of their supposed comedy movie they've been making when we got to the cocaine stuff, when it turns into fucking Lenny at the end. And then it's like you just really don't know how to take any of it. But there are definitely some interesting aspects in here, like, that we explore, like, the impact that Airplane had on him when it opened just before Caddyshack, and the way it overshadowed it. That's the stuff that I really wanted to see in this. And it's in there, but it's So yeah, it succeeds on a little bit of a level. Like, it tells an interesting story for sure, but not always well. It has a horrible flow. It's about an hour 40 something, but it feels long. Like, this movie feels really long. It feels like we're watching an entire life, for sure, but not in the way it's supposed to. It's yeah. So it's got a lot of problems, but I think it holds your interest enough that I wouldn't say, I wouldn't necessarily recommend. I'd recommend it for the story, but not for a laugh, if that makes any sense. For a movie like this, it's just really weird to kind of try to piece together what exactly they were going for, but there is something of worth in there if they didn't execute it exactly the way I'm sure they intended. Um, so yeah, that's an interesting bag, this one. But if the subject matter alone interests you, I'd totally look into that. So yeah.